Good morning, everybody. I'm John Cumming, the editor-in-chief of the Northern Miner, and we'll continue on with the Plan Nord specifically. And let me just introduce our panel. We got some very experienced mining fellows here. In some ways, the best of Quebec junior mining, I would say. Just immediately to my right, and then progressing across, we have Pascal Hamelin. He's a mine engineer. He's the president and COO of Metanor Resources. They're a junior gold explorer and developer in the Urban Berry Camp. They have the Bachelor Mill and the Berry Deposit. And I should say, all three juniors are within the Plan Nord. So we've got the big picture with Mr. Sauvé, and then we have three people who are actually involved in the area. Moving along, we have Darrin Wagner. This is a Vancouver-based junior, but their assets are in Quebec, particularly in the Detour Lake Trend. The Martiniere and Bug Lake gold zones are the most active areas there. And then, of course, we have Mr. Sauvé. He's a career civil servant with the Quebec government since 1987, including a stint as deputy minister of the Natural Resources Ministry. Right?
Exactly.
And he was appointed to a 5-year term in 2015 as CEO of the Plan Nord, so he'll be around for a while with Plan Nord. And then at the very end, we have Guy Bourassa. He's the president and CEO of Nemaska Lithium. This is a very interesting project. If you're not familiar with it, it's hard rock lithium, and it's progressing very steadily towards production. We got a big financing lately, so it's interesting. Twist on the normal gold and silver of the Abitibi. This is something completely different. So I think if we could, start with Mr. Sauvé. I know as an Ontario citizen, governments have these big plans and they have spending commitments that are beyond the mandate of the government. So when I hear about big plans of a government, I'm a little skeptical, but this is something with a longer life that is associated beyond the present government. Is that correct? Could you kind of speak to that issue?
So I didn't hear the question.
The idea that this plan, even though it's so long-term, it will still be around if the present government isn't around in another year or so. Is it right?
Yeah. I wouldn't have said that 5 years ago, but now we've been implementing the plan for 3 years. We have a lot of infrastructure established. There are a lot of projects which are being realized right now. We have a very strong support from the population living on the territory, from the indigenous people, from the mining companies, from all the stakeholders. And all together, I think we plan this project on a long-term basis. The plan goes right up to 2035, and I think it would be very, very difficult to stop it now because we're just on the rails and the train is going forward.
Right. Okay. And maybe, Pascal, you could speak to having your project within the Plan Nord territory. Does it make a difference? If the Plan Nord had been delineated a few hundred kilometers north of you, would it be different, or?
Yeah, well, for us, the first thing Plan Nord did for us is to put the spotlight on mining, forestry, the people from the north, basically, to sell the north down to the south. That was the first thing that the Société Plan Nord did. People in Montreal, Quebec City, they think the north is Mont-Tremblant. So it's a good thing. It was a selling item to, like, there's people in the north. 120,000 people covers over 80% of the province. So it's a good thing, just that aspect itself. So in 2012, it was established, and that was the first game, because when and it's the same thing at the federal level, people fight for a chunk of the budget from the federal and provincial, and having the sale done down south, it helps building the north. That was the first thing we saw positive for us.
Right. And Darrin, could you kind of answer the same question? Does it make a difference having your project within the Plan Nord territory?
Yeah, absolutely. I think any, especially as an explorer, any assistance you can get from your government, from the First Nations, et cetera, makes a huge difference. And I think what people don't realize is just how vast that territory actually is. It's an amazingly large area.
Yes.
And therefore it's an amazingly large challenge to open it up and bring forth the wealth for the local people and for the province. And having this kind of initiative in place as an explorer just makes it, provides a level of comfort, I guess, when we're investing our dollars, that we have backing, from the province, we have backing from the local communities, and therefore we can go out into that vast territory and try and create some wealth. Right,
right. If I could just chip in a little bit of the history of Quebec, if you're not familiar with it, but say in the 1970s or so, you had on both political sides, and provincially, you had this desire to build Hydro-Quebec and to make Quebec stronger. So there was a massive push to build these hydro dams in northern Quebec and sell the power to New York City and have aluminum smelters. So for the last 50 years, there's been this strong desire for mega projects in the north. And if you drive along the roads in Radisson on James Bay, they're heavy-duty roads built for major trucks and stuff like that. So you would have, gold juniors going along these roads built for the Hydro-Quebec and would find gold deposits. And all that Eleanor was all discovered by, driving down these hydroelectric roads. But there's a strong appetite for these mega projects in Quebec with the government and engineering firms and power firms all working together. So even though Plan Nord is relatively new, there's this culture within Quebec that's multi-generational.
Exactly. In fact, the work done by Hydro-Quebec allow us to develop an expertise to access the north. The road I was talking about, the 400 miles long road getting to the north, is the access to the main Hydro-Quebec infrastructure up north. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it opened the territory to mining exploration. So there are several mines. Guy could talk about it, and you can talk about it as well. So it just gave access to the territory for exploration, and then for the construction of new mines and new infrastructure. So we built quite a lot of dams and hydroelectric power stations over the last decades. Now we're getting more into mining development, using all the infrastructure there and making the territory available for mining.
Right. And Guy, now,
production.
Yeah, Guy, I was going to say your project is the most remote of the three here, and you have a more exotic mineral, and you're using more experimental metallurgy. Like, what has it meant to you to be in the Plan Nord area, and what kind of support have you found there?
Well, I was going to say that the only word that comes to mind is credibility. We're fortunate that our project is crossed by the Route du Nord from Chibougamau to the James Bay Road. So we didn't need really the impact of the assistance, financial assistance by the Plan Nord, but credibility, because it confirms the dedication of the Quebec government to really support development of the northern of Quebec and also mining in itself. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very important for us, the Plan Nord, and we are obviously wants to be part of it. What I was going to say, though, you brought the attention to the 1970s, the development of the North. One important point for everybody interested in investing around the world in mining, the best place to be in the world with First Nation is in the EUHG James Bay territory, which covers only the southwest part of the Plan Nord. But there's a modern treaty that was adopted, which is the Northern Quebec and James Bay Agreement, signed with the 10 Cree Nations. So there's no potential land claim, reclamation or claim. And that helps a lot on social acceptability and also financing your project, because you have a clear legal pattern around there. So not only did Hydro-Quebec develop the access, allowing us to go and easily find new minerals and new discoveries. Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, Mr. Sauvé mentioned the impact of CGM, the database in Quebec. That's very, very important, because a project that we're going to be launching and putting in production was found in 1962. But if it had not been of CGM, when there was interest raised in the lithium space in the mid-2000, we would not have known about this. It would have been it would have needed to be found. In this case, overnight, we went on CGM, looked for the historical showings of lithium, and 5 days later, we're on the ground, and we were walking on what's now known as one of the largest and richest lithium deposits in the world. Mm-hmm. So if it had not been of that database, well, it would not be there. Mm-hmm. And if it would not have been of the road developed and the infrastructures developed to access the hydro dams by the Route du Nord, of course, we would have spent maybe 50% of the budget on helicopter flying to drill. Mm-hmm. Now we're about at 500 meters from the deposit by a year-round access road.
Right.
So, very good place to be in Quebec, northern Quebec, UHC in particular.
I think another success story of the Plan Nord was the Stornoway mine. It was kind of a little bit remote, and the Plan Nord, I believe, funded the road up to the Renard Mine. Is that correct? Or am I off there?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, you're right. It was a partnership between the company, the Cree Nation of Mistissini, and the company.
Right.
And the Société Plan Nord. It was a combination of the three.
Right.
Exactly.
So some of these investments are many hundreds of millions, but the government will chip in a little 30 million investment or something like that. That'll be the difference. And you could see that in Bloom Lake was reopened late last year.
Exactly.
With a very small investment considering the major investments in the Labrador Trough.
We believe that infrastructure is a key into the development of mining on the territory, because Bloom Lake wouldn't have reopened without the infrastructure we bought in the port of Sept-Îles to give access to the infrastructure and then to be able to export their minerals. Same thing with the road. The road going to Stornoway, and is planned as a road who is going to give access to more than one project. It's going to give access to several projects, because we know that on the way, and we should push further north that road eventually to get to the Trans-Taiga east-west road, and that will allow to have better access in this area to the mining sites.
Right. I think. Go ahead.
I would like to add on what Guy was mentioning about the what happened from the 70s and 2002 with La Paix des Braves. Is the structure is in place for the social acceptability with the First Nation and the local community. So you come in as a junior exploration company from anywhere in the world. You come in Quebec. You talk to the Ministry of Natural Resources. You talk to the Société Plan Nord. They'll give you a template. They'll tell you this is all the steps you got to go through, and it's very clear. We were a junior company in 2010, and then we put Bachelor Lake mine in commercial production in 2013. So in 3 years, we got the agreement with the First Nation of Waswanipi. We got all the permits, and it was very clear path. You got to go through all the steps, of course, for social acceptability. But the path was very clear, and it's set rules. It's pretty easy. And we're applying the same thing for the Barry deposit next door. It's the same rules. It's very easy to follow.
Right, yeah, and I think when the when the investors in the audience are looking, that's one of the clear differentiators. Being in the province of Quebec, those rules are very clear. They're adhered to by the government and by the companies. The First Nations relations are exceptional, and we just have to look one province over at the difficulties that have occurred there, without that because of the lack of foresight versus the foresight that's gone on in Quebec. And then they add in the support from the government, both in the exploration incentives they provide to us, and then obviously from Plan Nord, which has kept our road open. Our road that we use was slated to close. They'd stopped maintenance on it. It's now, with some funding from Plan Nord, it's now maintained. So I think it just makes a huge difference. It helps us stretch our exploration dollars that much further, and it brings projects like these two gentlemen are running through to fruition that much quicker because the path is clear, it is laid out, it's very straightforward.
Right. And a bit of trivia, if you think of what mining company in Canada employs the most Canadians by far, it's a British firm, Rio Tinto, and they have a large Quebec presence. Their the Rio Tinto aluminum is headquartered in Montreal, and you have the titanium on the North Shore within the Plan Nord, and you have of course, the Iron Ore Company of Canada in the Labrador Trough, plus diamonds in the Arctic too. But I should say, just as an example of the governments working together, especially compared to BC and Alberta fighting over pipelines, you had the Premier of Quebec, Philippe Couillard, and the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, Dwight Ball. It was April 12th, they got together in Quebec City and agreed to jointly help promote the Labrador Trough area. So Robert, maybe you could speak to that?
Yeah, we've signed it. The two prime ministers signed this agreement 2 weeks ago. We've been working on that for about 3 months now. We just agreed to work on two aspects. The first aspect is to work together to develop the Labrador Trough, which is right on the border between Newfoundland, Labrador, and Quebec. So there are mines on both sides. All those mines has to export their mineral through Sept-Îles because that's the only way out. So we have to work together for transport matters. A part of the railway is on the Newfoundland and Labrador side. The port is in the Quebec territory, so we decided to collaborate for mining exploration to support the development of the mines there, for manpower, for energy, for all aspects. And it's going to be much easier. That's a way for us to establish a good cooperation with the province. And we have also other plans concerning road infrastructure and access to the eastern part of the territory as well. So we're very proud of having this agreement. We have also a cooperation agreement with Ontario for Northern Ontario. So we work together on different aspects as well.
Are there any? I know Quebec is sort of famous for very specific tax incentives. You know, you can drill beneath a certain depth and get a tax break or something like that. Is there some specific tax break or funding if you're in the Plan Nord that if you're a junior?
Yeah, I think for us, for hard dollar expenditures that we make, we basically get about 28% of what we put in the ground back.
Right.
Which obviously takes the dollars we get from our investors and lets us stretch it that much further. So it's a pretty exceptional program on that basis, the best one that I'm aware of, and just helps us do more with the dollars the precious dollars that we get into the company.
Right.
It's a great program for the explorer for sure.
Right. And I noticed one other aspect of the Plan Nord. Ultimately, 50% of the territory will be kind of a park protected area, but there isn't a rush to delineate that, right? But what would be the criteria for creating parkland in the Plan Nord?
Oh, we have a very important commitment in the Plan Nord. We wanted to have social acceptability, so right from the beginning in 2009, we worked with the communities, we worked with the environmental groups, we worked with all the sectors of activities, mining companies and all that. And one commitment from the Prime Minister then was to have 50% of the territory, so that means 600,000 square kilometers, half of the territory, which would be a zone for protection of the environment, maintaining the biodiversity, and have non-industrial use of the territory. So that made mining companies very nervous for a while, exploration company particularly, but we're working on it now because right now the footprint of all the villages, all the mining infrastructure, the reservoir of Hydro-Québec, and all the infrastructure of Hydro-Québec represents less than 6% of the territory. So we have some margin for maneuver. I mean, it will have to be a continuous process because we cannot decide where is going to be the park and where is going to be the mine because about 25% of the territory has been explored yet. So there is quite a lot of knowledge to have to be able to go through all this process. So we work, again, all together. We have a committee where we have representative of the indigenous communities. We have representative of the mining sector, hydroelectric, the elected people living on the territory, and also the environmental groups. And we work together to establish criteria and see how we're going to make the knowledge of the territory evolve and how we're going to identify the zones where there is a mining potential, preserve them, and eventually, even if we have a park and if a mine is discovered on the site in the park, I mean, we'll have a way to just compensate the territory by enlarging the park somewhere else. So there is no instruction manual for it, but we work on it all together, and that's probably the best way to get some results on that. And we have all the way to 2035 to succeed in this operation.
Great.
So that's not that much a constraint, but it's a way to make sure that we'll have in mind all the time that we want to work on a sustainable approach and make sure that we preserve the environment as much as possible.
Okay, great. I think we're just about out of time, so we'll have to wrap it up. And next we have got Darrin will tell us more detail about your company, right? Okay. Thanks very much, everybody.